Welcome to DC Insiders, where we bring you sharp views from the political capital of the world here in Washington, D.C. on global issues with relevance to Taiwan. I'm your host, Wenchi Yu. Today, our guest is Ambassador Derek Mitchell, former president of the National Democratic Institute and a former U.S. ambassador to Burma. He's now a senior advisor to CSIS, a DC-based think tank. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you, Wenchi.
So Trump 2.0's suspension of funding for human rights and democracy sent a shockwave across the global nonprofit world. Tell us what happened and why you think the Trump administration is making this move.
Well, what happened on the human rights and democracy side was part of a broader pattern, a broader issue led by Elon Musk under what's called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which was basically there to cut government. They talked about reviewing, talked about making it more efficient, but really it's about cut government programs.
But clearly USAID is a target.
Yes, USAID was the first target, and they did that, I think, advisedly, thinking that Americans are neuralgic about international aid. Many Americans really don't understand it. They think we spend much more than we actually do.
They probably have never heard of it either.
Not much, and they think that we have enough problems at home. Like any country will say, look, we have unpaved roads, we have problems. Why are we spending all this money abroad when we have issues at home? So it was sort of a soft target for the Musk crew and for the Trump administration. And the human rights and democracy in particular, I think, was a target that was close to Musk's heart, maybe Trump's too, that they found this somehow to be interference in others' affairs. They used the Russian talking points, the Chinese talking points, about how it's about regime change, about intrusion in people's affairs, and really not understanding how this work is done.
Well, interestingly, the near abolition of USAID also became a topic of heated debate in Taiwan. Can you also share what exactly has happened to USAID so far and why that's such a big deal in Washington, D.C.?
Well, USAID was essentially eliminated. What it was tucked under State Department, but they froze all of the funds. Ultimately,
they laid off a lot of people.
They laid off a vast majority, 90% of the people. And they put it under Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and he, on March 10th, said 5,200, I think of 6,200 grants will go forward. But that's about 80% cut. And so massive reduction in the humanitarian assistance, the health aid, our international assistance to desperate countries worldwide, which will have international impact.
Yeah, have you heard from the fields, how has that affected people or nonprofits?
Well, it's early yet, but you're getting anecdotal information. For instance, there is food assistance in depots in Ethiopia and Sudan going to waste, while millions of people are dying of starvation. There are health clinics on the Thai-Burma border that are not able to stay open and get medicines to desperate refugees. So people are dying as a result of the lack of immediate humanitarian assistance. That's just the immediate. When you don't deal with malaria or Ebola or the budding pandemic, bird flu, or the next COVID, then infectious disease can get out of control. If Benjamin Franklin talked about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
So I think these more direct and urgent humanitarian needs clearly is having a huge impact in the world. And even for those who are working in the human rights world, I've heard from nonprofit organizations that it's impossible to repair the damage that's being done to America's credibility. And even if, let's say in the future, in the new administration, USAID is reinstated or rebuilt, they're not going to trust America anymore. Do you think this is a moment of this grand shift of America's role in the world?
Well, what you talk about is perception, how folks perceive America. And there's no doubt that trust is hard to build and it's easy to lose. And we've lost a lot of trust. And particularly in the human rights or democracy field, you're working in some sensitive environments sometimes. And once you expose these folks, or they feel they can't count on American protection or American commitment, that can have lasting impact.
And America is such a beacon of democracy.
Well, we're the largest donor in the world.
Yes.
Just practically, if we pull the rug out from this stuff, very few countries can fill that void. China is one of them who might. This is soft power of America that's being lost, and the Chinese may try to play on it.
How might they actually get involved? I mean, they don't give grants to human rights.
They tend not to. They tend to give loans. their own worst enemy in a way. But maybe they'll give a little bit more assistance and see the value of it. They have their own domestic problems, of course. They have their own issues, and their own people will be neuralgic about giving too much to others. But they always like to say that you can't trust the Americans. You know, their commitment is wafer thin, and they'll point at this and go, see, we told you.
Well, I think, you know, USAID or a lot of the work around democracy and human rights, people would put it under the sort of in the bucket of soft power, America's soft power. Harvard professor Joseph Nye, who coined the term soft power, recently actually had a piece in the Financial Times, and he acknowledged that it is rarely sufficient on its own, if it's just on its own. And what we've witnessed over this past decade in America seems to be that there's a growing sense of insecurity, whether it's the military or it's our economy. And so Trump in particular seems to be willing to relinquish America's soft power in the world.
I'm not sure he understands soft power. I've always been concerned with Joe Nye's soft power only because it's absolutely a brilliant idea. It was an innovative idea, soft power, but it has the word soft in it. And there are some people in America, when they hear soft power, they only hear soft when it's actual real power.
Yeah, it's real power.
It's real power.
It's smart power.
Its ability to attract others, to show that you actually care about them. You're willing to invest in them.
Makes you more attractive.
Make you more attractive. And that is, you know, hard power is coercive.
Right.
That doesn't attract people. You say, follow me or else. They'll follow you for a time, but it comes at a cost. It's much more costly to do that than it is to be attracted. You know, just it costs nothing.
Right.
But, I mean, it costs what you do in international aid. But I think, again, the efficiency of how much we actually spent on aid. Most Americans don't understand. They think it's 25%. When you ask them you poll them, you say, how much is a reasonable amount? They'll say 10% of the GDP of our budget, where actually it's under 1%. So the lack of understanding, it's not a matter of American commitment or American people not wanting to have those commitments anymore and retreating from the world. I don't think they truly understand the
value.
value.
It seems to be a messaging and a communication issue, even just helping people understand, right? Because if you look at Elon Musk or some of his friends on Twitter or X, the way they talk about cutting USAID seems to be so different from people who actually understand what they're doing.
Right. It's an easy mark. Again, I think Americans have always had a kind of a mixed view about engaging internationally at all. It goes back to George Washington, but even on international assistance, their hearts are in the right place. But they'll always say, focus here at home first. And if they think we're doing too much abroad, whether it's a foreign war or foreign assistance, a demagogue, someone could say, hey, we're going to cut this because we're going to focus on America. And actually, this is in America's interest to prevent conflict, prevent crises that could come onto our shores.
What does that mean when you say, for example, you know, Trump doesn't understand soft power and has no interest in using soft power of America? For smaller countries like Taiwan, what is your advice? I mean, should they be growing their hard power as well now that the world is such? It seems like the pitch of democracy and human rights may not work as well with this administration.
Well, Taiwan, absolutely. Taiwan should always focus on its hard power, its defense, its societal resilience, its economic resilience, its interaction with its neighbors in Asia to provide a kind of common security. I do think, though, regardless of America's face right now, that the importance of democracy, human rights, of dignity of every human being is a very important factor in the appeal of Taiwan.
And I think that differentiates Taiwan from China.
And you want to be doing that. And I think the democratic solidarity worldwide, that fight goes on. I mean, democracy is under attack in a lot of places in the world.
In America too.
In America too, from within countries, and Ukraine is from outside countries. But the demand for a voice, demand for dignity, to have a say in your own affairs of who governs you. That's a natural human desire.
You mentioned Taiwan should always have strong defense. Now, this administration clearly is sending the signal that Taiwan needs to beef up its defense spending even more. Now, the percentages, you know, we've heard different numbers. And what do you think is a reasonable kind of spent on defense?
I think the numbers are artificial. I do think the 3%, which was something that's been on the books for a long time, a commitment that Taiwan governments have had but never actually achieved, that's a reasonable target as a signal and a symbol of the commitment needed to do defense. But ultimately, it's really about what capabilities you need. I mean, you're facing an increasing threat in Taiwan. And if you're not thinking about, or people of Taiwan are not thinking about what's necessary to meet a growing, realistic, serious challenge from China, then it's not a matter of numbers, it's a matter of capabilities. So if it's unmanned drones or undersea capabilities or small stuff rather than big platforms, again, societal resilience, homeland security, homeland defense, reserve forces, all that kind of thing. I don't know how much that costs. Whatever is required, I think, needs more seriousness. And there has to be a recognition. You can't simply rely on the United States, not because Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Joe Biden. It's simply a fact of Taiwan's defense.
And so Taiwan has to take it seriously itself for people to take it seriously.
Absolutely, have to send that signal they're serious about it. For years, and again, I have a Pentagon background, there was a sense that there wasn't seriousness actually on either side for a time, years ago. It was more about symbolism. Taiwan wanted the latest gleaming item, the marquee item. It didn't necessarily work for their defense because no one really took an attack on Taiwan seriously. Now it's getting real. So thinking about what's the real need of Taiwan for its defense, it's probably not just the gleaming platform, but a lot of little things, the porcupine strategy of making Taiwan difficult to absorb.
Well, you obviously have done different things, from defense to promoting democracy and human rights, and you were our ambassador to Burma. So how do countries like Burma and Ukraine and Georgia, or maybe smaller democracies, feel about America right now?
I think every American is wondering what's going on. We're really puzzled, concerned. Anyone who's internationalist is concerned about whether our commitments to democratic nations, particularly Ukraine, we've gone this far. We can't give up on them now. In Burma, there's concern about the humanitarian assistance as much as anything. We don't give them military assistance, but they need solidarity, they need humanitarian aid along the border.
And the USAID mission there, is this still going to continue?
The mission is closed in Burma. There is a mission in Thailand that helps along the border. I think they're still running. I don't know how much money they have. But again, there's not much money running through there for these clinics and for the effort along the border. So the health situation, the education situation is starting to collapse. Things are closing up. And they're very disappointed in the United States. And that's a painful thing to watch.
I mean, with all that, do you think America's democracy is at risk? We kind of discussed this as well. And do you think it's a moment of going back to sort of U.S. changing role in the world, when the U.S. used to be the superpower, and now retreating from world affairs and not even representing some of the values that it was very proud of?
It's unclear. And again, we don't know how long this will last. I think we know where Trump's instincts are.
Is it just Trump, though?
There's always a strain in the United States. Frankly, a strain that's ultra-nationalist or Christian nationalist that may believe that Russia is in the vanguard, that white Christian nationalism that is represented by certain countries is actually where we ought to be aligned. But I don't think it's near a majority of the United States. We don't know what happened with NATO, what will happen. We don't know what will happen in the deal over Ukraine. With
China?
With China, it seems there's much more interest in sort of an anti-China attitude in this administration. I mean, much of the senior leadership, if anything, they're pulling up, their idea is pulling up stakes in Europe so they can focus more on China and focus more on the Taiwan issue.
People even say this is like the reverse Kissinger strategy, right? The U.S. trying to align Russia now so they can focus on, against China.
Right.
Are you convinced?
I think many do think like that. I think it's a poor bet, very unlikely. I think the Russians and the Chinese, even if they have a lot of differences over many centuries and a long border and a lot of tensions and cultural frictions, I think they have very common interest. And one of those common interests is to shape a world that aligns to their values, and they're concerned about America. They're not certain that Trumpism will last past 4 years. So they'll make their deals, they'll make as much as they can out of this moment with Trump, but they're not going to assume anything about America past 4 years, and they have their own narrow interests that they want to protect. And so I think the idea that you can pull Russia away from China is a Putin's dream idea. Then it puts him in the catbird seat, and he can play this, to his benefit, never having to truly pull away from China. And I think we'll be worse off for it as the United States. We lose a lot of our strength and our leverage and our power.
There's so many things that I wish the world could see.
It is amazing to watch this captain maneuver this giant ship.
It takes 3 days to cook this. The flavor is unbelievable, incredible.
And it's my turn to make something inspired by Chef Gore. It's going to be quite a challenge.
Can you imagine that?
It's surreal, yes, so real.
I can't give up. I got some ass kicking to do.
Nice move.
We're pushing each other to explore and experiment in new, different ways.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
很多时候是我们眼睛看不到的地方。
We might encounter mishaps and mistakes along the way. But at the end of the day,
it just transmits something straight from the heart.
Yes.
Cheers. Bon appetit.
It is about the fun, and it's about the glamour, and it's also about something much deeper than that.
Sometimes you just gotta seize the opportunity. You just gotta do it.
Have a place where you're appreciated for you exactly as you are, and where you can shine and be seen.
What do you think the opposition, which is the Democrats, need to do in the US right now to bring a healthier democracy back to American system?
The problem with the Democratic Party is they have very little control right now. They don't have the House, the Senate, or the White House. They're not able to really shape anything. There are different debates, there are various debates on what the Democrats should do. I happen to think whether it's Democrats or those associated with the Democrats should be going on television or pounding social media with a message about what is happening, telling the story about what President Trump is doing. He came in talking about inflation, about prices, and yet he's talking about Greenland, and he's talking about Canada as a 51st state. Meanwhile, the prices are going up, consumer confidence is going down. He's talking about tariffs, and tariffs are a tax on you, the consumer. Telling that story and just blanketing the airwaves and shaping the narratives, that's not happening yet. None of that is happening. I do think it's at the official level, the Democratic Party is probably right to keep its head down because it could become a foil for the Republicans. If they go out and protest or whatever, they can start using, oh, look at the Democrats, look at what they're doing. So let the Republicans dig their own hole for a while, tell the narrative story, and then eventually, I would say in 6-7 months, go out with your alternative. What is your alternative vision? They have to have an alternative vision. Being anti-Trump has proved in election after election after election not to work. It's not enough.
It's very interesting because I've had Taiwanese friends asking me, how come they don't hear anything from the Democrats, right? They expect the opposition party to do something. It's democracy that they see, they witness in Taiwan as well. Obviously they fight all the time, but at least you feel like there's the presence of opposition forces. And they don't see that in America right now.
I think a lot of Democrats don't see that right now, and people are frustrated. But again, there's a debate. The next election is in 2 years or a year and a half now. And there's a sense where the Republicans Trump is on his own digging a hole, and his numbers are starting to go down, and confidence in him are starting to plunge. Business confidence, consumer confidence, citizen confidence. And the idea is right now, stay out of the way. It's a tactical move. Stay out of the way. But I don't believe that simply doing that is enough. You have to shape the narrative. either shape or it gets filled by narratives like Trump's. He's on all over the airwaves, touting things that he's doing or promoting it in different ways. I think it's malfeasance to assume that the natural order of things will take care of things for the Democrats. They have to shape. And I haven't seen that. That's very frustrating.
On the other side, in Taiwan, with all that's happening in America, the skepticism of America is growing.
Yeah.
I don't need to name a single event, but the White House meeting between Ukraine and President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance probably caused this collapse of confidence of Taiwanese in America. And so what do you say to Taiwan? You've worked on Taiwan over the years. How can Taiwan trust America or American democracy?
Well, those are two different things. Trusting America's commitment to Taiwan and trusting America's democracy. I don't know if America's democracy is as important to Taiwan as America's commitment. I think so far, look, democracy is fragile, but it's also resilient. And we have institutions. There is fight in America. There are people fighting back, town hall meetings, and there is an opposition that exists. And the courts still have their say, and institutions are holding. People are not simply going to watch this go down, a democracy of 250 years.
And it's very hard to watch some of the most almost like staunch supporters of American democracy, those people in Taiwan these days start to question, right? Because they used to see America represents democracy, and and Trump, they see Trump as representing America as well, even though presidents change, right? But that's how people perceive this country,
right?
And so it's
a deflation, it's a disappointment, it's a betrayal at one level, and I think Americans feel the same way.
And how would you talk to them?
Talk to the Taiwanese?
Yeah, how or others in other parts of the world? How can you trust American leadership and trust American democracy again?
Well, watch us. Look, every democracy is a work in progress. There are going to be challenges to those democracies in every country, and this is our testing period. Our institutions have been strong. It's only as good as the people will it to be. And I do believe a majority of American people do not want to see a king. They didn't vote for a king. They voted to get the prices down. They didn't vote for someone to run roughshod over laws. They thought that was just talk. So what we're seeing is very, very disturbing. But it's not the end of America. It's not the end of American democracy. I think many of us are quite depressed here because of what we see. But we're starting to see the pushback. We're seeing from the grassroots. So it can be also a testament to the strength of citizenship, the strength of where democracy comes from, which is from the bottom up, and the strength of institutions, the importance of institutions, and a lesson for those around the world who worry about democracy, can it hold? It will come under attack by people who want to have control, and that will always be there, that struggle between control and freedom. And that's happening in our country now. We're not immune to it, we're human. So we simply have to struggle, and just Taiwanese need to know we're not going away. We still believe in Taiwan. We still believe in Taiwanese democracy, and Taiwan's ability to chart its own future is very important to Americans, and we will not let Taiwan go down the drain simply because of a whim of one individual if it comes to that.
And if America gets through this, I think it'll make this country probably stronger, hopefully, and be more convincing to others.
I hope so. Again, trust is hard to build back. And I get that people do, but that's a perception issue. I do believe that 4 years it could change and we'll come back and we'll have assistance again, because again, this is a bipartisan issue. Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats have appropriated this $72 billion of US foreign aid a year. That was appropriated by Congress. The question is, does this president have the right to simply say, I'm just going to cut it? This is a legal issue that is being adjudicated in the courts as we speak. And in fact, as we speak, court decision after court decision has said it's not legal. The National Endowment for Democracy, they had their funding frozen. It was just unfrozen by the court after a lawsuit. So again, Trump is testing the institutions. and the institutions are fighting back.
That's the part probably most people don't get to see is
Yeah.
all these legal suits that are filed
Right.
and then, court decisions.
And I think we're stronger, that we have to stay in solidarity. It isn't, I know America was always that beacon, but it's never been just about America. Because America represented democracy, but we weren't democracy. Democracy unto itself
Yeah.
is important because it creates, again, not just human dignity, but better health, education, peace, development outcomes.
Right.
So anybody should be fighting for those norms
Ideals,
and
yeah.
ideals and those standards for their own good, for their own sake, and work in solidarity with other democracies and other people, regardless of America. But Americans are not going away. American philanthropy, American civil society, we're not going away. We're still going to be there. We're just not necessarily going to have the same full-throated support and commitment from our president. So we just have to get through this period.
Right. Well, I appreciate your optimism and
tempered optimism.
Very good spokesperson as well for America and the system. So thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity, Wenchi. Thank you.
Thank you for watching DC Insiders. Please follow us on social media for our latest episode. See you next time.